I was working at a summer camp when I was 17, and I was the senior counselor in charge of this cabin, and it was my job to make a bunch of 13-year-olds go to sleep. And after trying everything I could think of at my wit's end, I told them, if you are ready for bed in the next 5 minutes, I'll tell you a bedtime story. And to my absolute horror, they did what I asked. And I suddenly owed them a story, and I told them a Native American folktale I knew. They wanted another, and another, and the next morning, the entire camp knew, and by the following evening, I was suddenly the camp storyteller. I was born with a vision impairment, retinitis pigmentosa, and that's doctor medical talk for your retina looks funny. And so the retina is responsible for detecting color and shapes and shades and shadows, and the brain makes sense of everything and puts the picture together. So my retina doesn't quite do its job, and over time it does less and less of what it's supposed to do. And so there's a lot of times where my brain is just kind of making stuff up of, I see a bunch of green, it's probably a tree. So I think that my vision impairment is part of what made me who I am. And I took up rock climbing and backpacking and canoeing, things where I was more competing against myself than anyone else. By the time I got out of college, I was actually legally blind. And while leading in the outdoors, my eyesight had been progressively making things more difficult. And so it could be dangerous. I felt that it was time to move on to something else. And then around 2011, I decided to change careers, and I started doing storytelling full time.
Michael was asked to come to tell stories at Avalon.
Spread across the land like a wildfire, out of control. But there are some things in this world that can't be burned.
He's very apt at telling stories to children as well as adults.
Remember that it only takes one to change the course of history. I think because of my eyesight, I tend to use just my voice to communicate things, or my guitar, or my drum, whatever music I'm playing. I find that I'm very conscious about the sounds that I'm using.
I love his talking in between when he talks about the legends that come from some of the American Indians and some from the Viking era, and how he makes these stories his own.
The most perfect, beautiful heart. It was the most beautiful shade of scarlet red. The Wizard and the Fairies. I wrote it out as a book, first for my niece and my nephew, and I thought, what if my story could inspire artists to create their own art? And I decided to leave the illustrations blank.
Children should be inspired to use their imagination, and this is what he stirs up inside of you. They're inspired to draw what they see, which may be different from what another child sees.
Woo! Thank you very much.
Bravo.
I really believe that it is important, not only for kids, but for everyone to listen to a story, whether it's a personal story or a myth from centuries ago, and think about what it means.
You're never too old to use your imagination, so it's a wonderful thing he does.
Rather than saying, I'm going to go tell stories here, I'll say, I'm going to go share some songs and some stories here, because to me it really is a process of give and take. I'm going to give something to the audience, and they're going to give something back to me, and you've made a connection.